Okay, today is Thursday, April 29th. I'm here with subject number 5. Currently researching the following question. How do counselors who provide services to Spanish-speaking clients gain their awareness, acculturation, and skills to work with this population? So question number 1. How long have you worked with the current organization as a therapist or counselor?
4 years.
Okay. And question number 2, what are your licensure credentials?
LPC.
Okay. And that's a licensed professional counselor, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right. Question number 3. Describe the diversity of the populations you provide service to.
Anyone, any age, any background, regardless of whether or not they have insurance, English speaking, Spanish speaking, sign language. Yeah.
Question number 4. Can you describe your comfort level providing services in Spanish?
It's definitely grown over the years. I don't know if you're going to ask this later, but I think it would be good to include in a research paper. But I first decided to relearn Spanish. I was in a crisis call middle of the night, and the language line kept dropping. And by that point, it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. The mom spoke a bit of English. I still remembered a bit of Spanish from school, and I asked if it was okay, and if we just continued with, what we both knew. So I'd already asked all the important questions as far as like safety, things like that. So I figured even if there was a misunderstanding, the language line literally kept dropping every time we called it. And that was when I decided to relearn Spanish. So that summer I, between my Spanish speaking coworkers, practicing with conjuguemos.com and just different resources I learned over the years, was able to eventually get to the comfort level of being able to pass a proficiency test at my agency.
Okay. Question number 5. Can you describe your skill sets working with Spanish-speaking clients?
What do you mean by
skill sets? Skill sets, what, like your experience, your knowledge, what tools have you learned or used, and I think you kind of touched a little bit, right there, using on the language line. But like educationally, have you, have you taken courses, classes in the past?
Yeah. So I started learning Spanish in middle school, continued through high school, and then 2 years of college. Got a certificate in Spanish through my university, and not just language courses, but also courses on culture, history, things like that. And then as far as how I, more stay up to date on the job, it really helped that in my previous position, I had multiple Spanish speaker coworkers. So I was able to ask, questions like, how would I say this? Or, just things that, or things I always had trouble with, like por versus para was always hard for me. So even when I was in school, or even if I said something wrong on the phone, one of my coworkers would correct me. So it was a good educational experience.
Okay.
So just online resources, working with native speakers.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Question number 6. How would you describe your understanding of Spanish-speaking clients' cultural background, beliefs, customs, and values?
I would say I've definitely learned a lot, especially about like the immigration experience. I've had a number of clients who've had a variety of experiences with immigrating. Some unfortunately, were experienced trafficking and different concerns with customs, things like that. So So I've attended trainings on my own, done research on my own, as well as talking with clients with those experiences. So.
Okay, excellent. Question number 7. Describe your experience when working with Spanish-speaking clients with a different dialect.
That can really depend. So a lot of, I tend to do better with dialects that, like, I had professors or, people that I know in the past that spoke that dialect. Puerto Rican Spanish is hard for me because I feel like they drop off a lot of the consonants.
Right.
And the way I think about it is that, in English, how many times do we drop off consonants? Like, instead of do you want to grab a bite to eat, is do you want to grab a? Like, it's, we do that. And that for me is a lot harder in Spanish. So I sometimes have to, ask them to repeat what's going on, or, making sure that I'm getting the full point. And there's other dialects that I was like, okay, I really like this dialect. It's more, a little more, slower pace, a little more, enunciation with certain things, and that's easier for me to understand. I also did have, a family once, again, for crisis, that, I was speaking Spanish. They were speaking something that sort of sounded like Spanish, but was not my Spanish. And it was, one of their older teen children was translating between the two of us because they were speaking it was like a tribal dialect from Mexico. And kind of find out, it was not like straight up Spanish. So it was like, I felt better once I realized that, it wasn't, I was speaking improperly or anything. It was that they were speaking a combination of Spanish and the dialect from where they were from. And then the older child was able to help translate. It wasn't ideal, but even if I had called the language line, like, they probably would have had someone that spoke that exact dialect. So.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting to know. Good.
Yeah.
Question number 8. What does it mean to you to have a commitment to diversity, and how would you see yourself demonstrating it in your field?
I think commitment to diversity is meeting people where they're at. I have my own experiences and background. Everyone else has their experiences and background. And it really reminds me of, there's actually a Bible story that always comes to mind, where actually two, where, these two leaders, they were sent to help the people going through a rough time. And before they made, any recommendations or any changes, they sat looking at what was going on for several days. So I think a lot of it, even if someone's from the same general culture as myself, of sitting with someone where they're at and truly trying to understand, you even in a certain population, like, what is their personal experience, or what's been the hardest part about that for you? Because that can be different for each person. I'm always trying to learn and grow, whether it's, whether it's about, a different culture, a different need. I always try to get those trainings in, and have those conversations and try and figure out how can we do it better. In my previous position, there were several times where we only had certain forms in English, and it was like, hey, we really need this in Spanish. And then I was tapped to help, translate them into Spanish. So, and even, offering to families, like when we do a treatment plan, like, hey, do you want me to write this in English or Spanish or both? Because usually, like, especially working with a kid, the kid was more likely to want it in English, the parent more likely to want it in Spanish. Just being, I think, present in the moment of what the needs are. We had a kid that was more, understandably more concerned about paying off the person that brought them into the country than about going to school. So all people were concerned about was, well, this kid's not going to school. And I was like, well, this kid, has other concerns going on, has nothing to do with school. So, trying to have that understanding for myself, but also express that to others as needed.
Okay. Excellent. Question number 9. How does the agency or organization address a situation that involves a counselor's values or beliefs that are different from Spanish-speaking clients?
Well, so with any values or beliefs that are different, we're not to impose those values or beliefs on someone else. And I think, having that understanding of having that understanding of where someone else is coming from. So like I think, for example, the chancla, and there's actually a training I was recently at, talking about how there's this now movement to end chancla culture, but how it really came about because of oppression and trying to manage that. So where someone might go in and think, oh, well, this in New Jersey, this kid's being hit by an object. It's, in that culture, it's, it means something different. So.
Okay. In question number 10, and you might have touched this a little bit earlier, can you describe when it was difficult to express something in Spanish, and how did you feel in those occasions?
I definitely felt some kind of oh crap. So whatever feelings associated with that, and it's also sort of depend on the situation. If it was more of actually my adrenaline Spanish is much better than my regular Spanish. So I tend to get out of my head a little bit. Mm-hmm. I tend to get out of my head more. So it's easier to just speak. And there's been several times where that has happened for different reasons. So, but if it's more common, I'm trying to find the exact right word. I try to talk around it, or even what I will do is ask for a minute so I can look up the word that I'm trying to say. So I was most times I can find a way to describe it, even though I don't know the exact word. And if I can't do that, then I take the time to look it up with them. And I've had a couple of times where the family was like, oh, this, I still remember, I didn't know how to say breathe deeply. And I still remember, the family saying, oh, you say it this way. And so now I'll never forget that because I learned it in the moment. So.
Awesome. Question number 11. Can you describe your experience with professional counseling terminology in the Spanish language?
Professional counseling terminology hasn't been as difficult. What is more difficult I've found at times is the opening paperwork consent stuff, the legalese in Spanish. That's been more difficult. Even the word, I have a lot of trouble saying the word authorization in Spanish. I literally was walking around the office before just practicing how to say that. Just the first syllable was hard to say. So I would say, well, before I took my proficiency test, I looked up words in counseling. So I didn't know how to say bipolar. I didn't know how to say different things, or even before my Spanish speaking clients this past year, I didn't know how to say pandemic in Spanish. So I've learned how to say different things even in advance so that I'm not trying to figure it out while I'm with the client.
Question number 12. In your experience, what are the challenges faced by clinicians of Latino groups in the workplace? What strategies have you used to address those challenges, and how successful were those strategies?
Could you please repeat that one more time?
Sure. First one, in your experience, what are the challenges faced by clinicians of Latino groups in the workplace?
So I think one of the main challenges is, even if you have a bilingual clinician, not having bilingual psychiatry, other resources, things like that. I even had this recently where they're contacting me to schedule their psych appointment because of the language barrier. So trying to help them navigate that. Okay. I think other challenges are insurance, even work schedules, things like that.
And the next part to that question was, what strategies have you used to address those challenges, and how successful were those strategies?
So for the insurance is nice that I've been grateful to work in all my programs have been grant funded. So I haven't had to worry when they're in our program. The issue is linkage with afterwards.
Okay.
And so try to get a little creative and in figuring out what are the options for that. And or helping the family apply for insurance. So that was one. For the first one, I just totally blanked on what I said before that.
Yeah, that was great. You mentioned about the insurance, how it plays a factor,
Yeah.
And sometimes people may struggle getting that linkage or additional services that may need,
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, and the first one was communicating with other providers. So so I usually help advocate as needed with other providers. And yeah, I try to help advocate. Or make sure that there's someone to translate with that provider.
Excellent. And final question number 13. What efforts have you made or been involved with to foster multicultural understanding and cultural competence through working with this population?
Well, I joined our agency's Cultural Competency Committee, mainly because of just the different needs and I think areas for growth to meet those needs with this population. I think specifically, even simple things like making sure all the paperwork is available in Spanish. And yeah, make sure the paperwork is available in Spanish. I've also been trying to advocate for like talking to students that are in college, like that are still, like if you're taking Spanish or if you're already Spanish speaking and trying to consider what you want to do, like we need you in our field. Other than the idea of that hasn't really progressed beyond that so far. But I think that's really important of, if I had known how important Spanish was going to be now, like I may have taken 4 years of Spanish in college instead of the 2 years. And I've also I've spoken with different school staff and mental health professionals on different topics. And part of that includes, being culturally competent and the different needs that we've seen. For example, I had one kid where the mom didn't understand that, or it wasn't explained to her in Spanish that the medication her daughter was on could increase thoughts of suicide. And then the kid unfortunately had a suicide attempt. Thankfully, she was okay. But I told mom, like, hey, this medication has this, this black box warning. Were you aware of that? And she had no idea. So that I think, like, I don't know, if it was, I don't know the situation as far as that medication. It was with an agency that I'm not really that familiar with, or a primary care doctor. But I think those are definitely concerns that I've raised in training other people about like suicide awareness of, if you have clients speaking another language, make sure they understand the potential, not only potential side effects, but especially like the black box warning label.
Right.
So.
Okay. Excellent. So that actually concludes our interview. And at the conclusion of this interview, there will be a survey sent to our present subject to the email that she provided to us.